Good evening, Dr. Blumling. My name is Zach Eisenhower, and today I will be discussing with my grandparents why Pluto is not a planet anymore and what it might actually be. So, the first thing we have to cover is that in 2006, the International Astronomical Union actually downgraded Pluto from planet to dwarf planet. Now, there were a few reasons why this was the case, but the biggest reason is the criteria for what a planet is, according to this organization. So, the first criteria is that the object has to be in orbit around the sun. Check. So Pluto does orbit around the sun. It's a very, very old and very long orbit considering its distance from the epicenter of the sun. But it does have an orbit and it does circle around the star. The second requirement that the IAU has for all of its planets is that it has to have sufficient mass to assume hydrostatic equilibrium, meaning it has to have a nearly perfect round shape. Check. So, Pluto has met two of the three criteria already. It orbits the sun, and it's round. So you must think, what's the third one? The third one, and this is where there's a bit of a gray area, and it's more of a judgment call. The third one is that it has to clear the neighborhood around its orbit, meaning it has to be in the neighborhood of other objects that are orbiting the sun as well. So, the reason that Pluto was downgraded was because its orbit, or its path as it was circling the sun, took the planet too far away from the rest of the inner solar system to consider it a planet. It was decided that Pluto belongs to its own entity, despite the fact that it orbits the sun. Now, this is definitely a strange concept and one that I struggled to understand at first as well. The second thing I would like to discuss is if it's not a planet, which is pretty confusing, then what is it? So, back in 2015, scientists first used chemistry to test the cosmochemical theory. And what the cosmochemical theory was, is they believed that Pluto could actually be a giant coalescence of comets that have come together from throughout the universe. So rather than being a planet, they thought it would be just one giant comet. The methodology behind this theory, the cosmochemical theory, was actually a way for the scientists to use chemistry to actually estimate the content of its surface and what's inside of it. One of the ways they proved this theory was they sent two different satellites. First, the Rosetta Stone. Sorry, not Rosetta Stone, the Rosetta. And that was sent to another comet that was in the area to study its chemical composition as well as learn what really is inside of it. And they would drill holes and land on it and search for the ice sheets because there were giant ice formations that they would use to check out and determine this chemical composition to see if it would match Pluto's. Then the New Horizon probe was sent by NASA a year or so later, and that one actually did orbit Pluto. And basically, the way they tried to prove their theory was the New Horizon probe decided to probe around Pluto and then start to investigate as to what was on the surface and the chemical composition of the planet itself. Sorry, not planet, object. And what they found was that the data was actually very similar, that both the Rosetta and New Horizon, while they followed different objects, one followed Pluto, one followed a separate comet, they matched up in chemical composition very well. Scientists actually determined that Pluto has the same chemical composition of about 4.5 billion comets that have coalesced together. They found this in an ice sheet on the southern pole of Pluto in a heart-shaped formation on the planet. We find Pluto to be such an intriguing case because it's the only object in our solar system that was once a part of it and then left. The broader point and the bigger picture as to all this is that finding out more about what Pluto actually is could help us figure out, one, how planets form on a regular basis. It would help us open our eyes as to the way other planets become planets. much like the coalescence of Pluto. And the other reason it's important is because there's a whole generation of people out there, like you guys, who grew up knowing nothing but having 9 planets in the solar system. And this can be a pretty big culture shock. It can be a pretty big change to have to absorb. And it's important that the scientific community get the word out that Pluto is no longer a planet. That was my project. Thank you, Dr. Blumling. Thank you for a terrific year, and I hope you enjoy.